Welcome to this webinar, and thanks for taking part on a Friday evening. The webinar basically emerged on the background of a situation of continuous threat against places of worship, but also religious communities, which is, of course, not divorced from the general geopolitical situation that we're dealing with at the moment. At the same time, we have quite a few EU-funded projects working on this topic, and we thought about inviting some of them, of course, our own Partescom, but also a couple of other projects that we will see and hear presented as we go along. We're going to talk about the threat environment, but also about current solutions that have been developed within these projects and beyond. I will introduce the speakers as we go along, so one by one. Maybe just a word to me. I'm Daniela Pisoyo. I'm the coordinator of Partescom on behalf of the OEP. And I'm very happy to have this stellar panel here with me tonight. I will start with the first speaker, Jose Luis Salido, who is a researcher at the Euro Arab Foundation for Higher Studies, also researcher and expert of the EU Knowledge Hub on prevention of radicalization. He's a PhD candidate in political science at the University of Granada and member of the Spanish Network Against Hate Crime and Underreporting, as well as, of course, representing Fundea in Partescom. So that being said, I'm going to give you the floor, Jose Luis. So guys, about 15 minutes per presentation, so we have a bit of time for questions.
Okay, thank you, Daniela. I'm gonna share my screen. You see it, right?
So far it's black, but yeah,
Yeah,
now
there
it's
you are.
good.
Okay. So thank you very much, Daniela, for having me today for your kind presentation. As mentioned, I'm gonna talk about the extremist threats on places of worship. And this is gonna be the scheme of my presentation today. First, an introduction and methodological consideration also of the research that I am presenting, then an analysis of the content, and then a discussion of the results. So the first part, the first thing to mention is that it is part of our previous project part test, in which we carry out a research about the extremist threats on places of worship and the landscape of threats that the religious community were suffering. And we selected 25 cases from 13 European countries, the 10 from the consortium, plus Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. In this sense, we consider it a violent attack, but also hate crimes against places of worship, in which we consider mosques, churches, and synagogues. The time frame that we considered for selecting the cases was from the 2012 to 2023. And the key variables that we analyzed in this research was the ideology of the perpetrator or the group in each case, then the type of attack and its development, which means if we are talking about a violent attack or a hate crime, but also the modus operandi, the development of the attack itself. Then the third variable is the online-offline dimension. If we are talking about an hybrid campaign or maybe a physical act against a place of worship. And then, last but not least, the existence of a manifesto previous to the attack or the hate incident. This research is published in the journal Peace Review, but it is also available in open source in my personal research gate. Then we can see in this slide a summary of the 25 cases divided from considering the place of worship which was targeted, but also the ideology of the perpetrator. And then let's go directly to the analysis. First, we have the first group, the far-right extremism, in which we made a wide interpretation of far-right extremism, in which we divided the three cases, the cases in three different branches. The first one is extreme right. When we talk about extreme right, we're talking about those more violent groups within the far-right extremism, also those related to neo-Nazism and fascism. In this case, we see that the predominant behaviors in the cases were online calls to commit violence against synagogues, but also we saw other cases in which the perpetrators were acquiring knowledge for making homemade weapons, such as bombs or 3D guns, by using printers and so on. In this case, we can see two profiles. First, a lone actor profile, which were characterized by for live streaming the shootings that they were carrying out, especially with a particular characteristic, which is that they carry out the attacks in holidays for each of the um, religious community. The first one in Beirut was against a mosque in the Ramadan, and then the one in La Halle in Germany was against a synagogue in one of the holidays for the Jewish community. In the case of the group attacks, we saw that they use other modus operandi, the use of fire bombs, but also homemade bombs to attack the places of worship. The second branch we are addressing today is the third millennium fascism, which are those groups that are more close to the neo-fascism characteristics, but also they are characterized by using some kind of campaigns more related to the traditional far left, such as solidarity initiatives, but in this case with a nativist approach in which they only, for example, gather food for being only for white people instead for everybody, as the far left groups usually do. In this case, the third millennium fascism cases are more characterized for being hateful incidents, primarily online and offline. In other words, hybrid coordinated hate campaigns in which they are coordinating some kind of physical act in front of the in the place of worship. At the same time, they are spreading some kind of the hateful messages against that religious community through social media. We had two characteristic cases in this branch. The case of Generation Identity in Austria, which they put a sticker around the mosque. At the same time, they were spreading anti-Muslim sentiments through social media. And on the other hand, we had the case of Guard Social in Spain, in which they coordinate a hateful campaign online. At the same time, they were at the front of the mosque with banners saying that they are terrorists and so on, even throwing flay bombs within the vicinity, within the perimeter of the places of worship. Another characteristic is that they want media impact. They want to gain visibility through this kind of acts. At the same time, it's also a mean to recruit people or to gather the attention of other people. And last but not least, within the far-right extremism, we had the populist radical right parties, which don't usually carry out physical acts against places of worship, but they contribute to the hateful to the environment, and also to polarize more the opinion of the society. In this case, we have two particular acts. First, the burning of Qurans in front of the mosque, as the case of in Denmark. On the other hand, one common act is the protests against the construction of mosques in different places. And we have seen this case in different countries. Then, in the case of jihadi extremism, although they are not the more numerous cases that we have studied, we saw that there are the most lethal attacks that we have studied, particularly against churches. It is characterized mainly by lone actors, which they have a poor preparation of the attack using improvised weapons such as knives and so on. But we studied a case of a cell in France, in which it was a well-prepared shooting of two guys that attack also a church, murder a priest, and they previously claimed loyalty to Daesh in a manifesto. In the case of left-wing extremism, we have the group which has less cases in our study. One carried out by an insurrectional anarchist group, which put a bomb in a church in Athens. And on the other hand, we have an attack of PKK sympathizers against a Turkish mosque in Germany, characterized for being an act of vandalism in which they smashed the windows of the mosque. At the same time, they were recording the act to claim that it was a revenge from a bombing attack that the Turkish army committed in the region, in the Kurdish region of Turkey. Last but not least, we had the category others, in which we included all these cases in which the perpetrator wasn't identified, but also in these cases in which the perpetrators were identified, but we couldn't clearly ascribe them to a particular ideological group. The predominant act in this case is cases of vandalism, such as hateful graffitis, arson attempts, destruction of symbolic and sacred places, such as religious cemeteries, thefts, smashing windows, and destruction of furniture. In this case, the most common act against churches were thefts and arson. And in the case of mosques and synagogues, we saw a lot of xenophobic paintings claiming that they should be out of the country or something like that, but also far-right symbologies such as swastikas and so on. Other common case in different countries, such as we saw a case in Romania, another case in Portugal, was the pig desecration, the desecration leaving pig parts in places in which around mosque, but also in some places in which they know that a mosque is going to be built. So this is also another common case. Last, we are going to talk about the discussion of the results. We saw that there is a variation by country depending on who is the predominant group that is carrying out acts against places of worship, and also depending on the religious community who are most affected by different attacks or hateful campaigns. Then the online dimension, we saw that there is a trend of hate hybrid campaigns from the far left and the far right, in which they combine this kind of physical acts with hateful campaigns in social media. We saw that in the online sphere is also the place in which some of the attackers left manifestos before committing their acts. Regarding the ideology, we can see that it varies the kind of after that they carry out, depending. We saw a huge variety from less to more violent, and depending on the ideology, as we saw clearly in the right-wing extremism. But they are all characterized for creating an otherness in which the religious community is always something that has to be hated by the people. And there is a key presence of the category others, which means that there is a lot of maybe one character, the 25% of the cases were people that wasn't identified or people who was identified, but we cannot ascribe to any particular ideological branch. Last but not least, we had the type of incident in which we saw that left-wing extremism and jihadism are those groups that or people that commit direct forms of violence, which means that they are characterized for committing the most lethal or violent attacks. Then concerning the right-wing extremism, we see that it varies depending on the number of perpetrators and ideological branch, the type of incident. If they, for example, those more ascribed to the extreme right, they commit more violent acts, while those more to the radical right commit more acts related to hateful incidents. As I mentioned, there is a high presence of manifestos. In the case of long actors, either they are from the right-wing extremism or jihadism. That's all from my side. Thank you very much for having me today. And you have here my email in case you wanna contact me for more information or whatever. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much for this overview. Um, I just wanted to, give the information to the participants that you guys can ask questions, of course, anytime. Just use the chat function, and I will address it to the panelists. Maybe just one for you at this point, Jose Luis. What can you tell us about the challenges of collecting data on on these topics? I mean, probably there is no central authority that does this kind of data collection. Did you have to use various kinds of sources? Yeah, what can you tell us about the methodology a little bit?
I would say that there is two challenges. First, in this case, we consider it from, on the one hand violent attacks. So there is a difficulty in say that, for example, in the case of far-right extremism, uh, when you have a violent act for jihadist extremism, is clearly ascribed and recorded as a terrorist incident, for example. So there is more information in that kind of category. But on the others, like left wing, right wing, it's more difficult to find the same information or the richest information that you can to feed the analysis, because you have to use another secondary sources and so on to have the complete picture of the what happened and who was carrying out the attack, what was the consequences and so on. And on the other hand, the other challenge that I see is when you're talking about hateful incidents, it's difficult to have less the same methodology for all the countries in comparison, because you have different legislations of hate crimes and so on. So one act which could be categorized in Spain, for example, as a hate crime, in other country could be nothing. Or, for example, you have the category racism, in which you put the Islamophobic acts against a mosque, for example, a hateful campaign or whatever. But in other countries, this is they have their own category or they don't record this kind of information. So it's difficult also to access or to make them all then comparable in that way. But yeah, it's a matter of you put when you are designing the study, you put like a minimum definition or a minimum, yeah, a minimum terminology or aspect that you need to include them as a hateful incident, and you try to see if they comply with these requirements or not.
Yeah, indeed. I can imagine that many projects have these long discussions at the beginning too, on definitions and indicators and all that. Thank you so much again. So we'll come back to your presentation with more questions a bit later. Now we continue. We move on to Italy. Alessandro, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to present you a little bit and then I'm going to give you the floor. So Alessandro Lazzari, at the Center for Interdisciplinary Research on Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience, University of Salento, Italy. He's a postdoc researcher and fellow at the University of Salento Center for Interdisciplinary Research, as I mentioned before. He obtained his PhD in computer engineering, so not a social scientist, but a real scientist, right? From the University of Florence in 2013. He served for 9 years as a project officer at the European Commission's Joint Research Center, contributing to various EU initiatives on CISR and cybersecurity. He teaches at the University of Lecce and NATO's COADAT. You have to tell us what that is before you start
Pleasure.
presenting. Huh?
With pleasure. Yeah, always
Okay. And has chaired missions in several countries to enhance their critical infrastructure security frameworks and has authored books and several publications on the subject. So you're basically working on various aspects of critical infrastructure security and cybersecurity policy and strategy. And that was basically also one of the ideas behind this panel to go a little bit beyond the specific topic of places of worship and look at connecting to also infrastructure security more broadly. So yes, with this, I guess you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, first of all, for allowing me and for inviting me. It's a pleasure. So the acronym COIDAT stands for Center of Excellence Defense Against Terrorism, is a center of NATO, accredited NATO center in Ankara, Turkey, that is specific to countering terrorism, and I'm teaching there for 6 years. But apart from that, thank you very much for the invitation. I think I got immediately from the title of the panel the fact that you were trying to explore, the boundaries between, place of worship and critical infrastructure. I think it's a very wise way to approach the topic, because the two topics are, becoming almost one. The boundaries are blurring. Our churches, it doesn't matter about the religion, but they are often integrated into the city context as well as our critical infrastructure. So we need to consider the possibility that one, attack to a critical infrastructure can have cascading effects on, infrastructure in the vicinity. So the presence of a given infrastructure can also, can also increase the chances that certain areas are more attacked than others. Lately, I've been particularly, let's say, bridging in the last year and a half, the research on critical infrastructure protection and protection on the place of worship. Because in the few slides I will show, I don't want to, show too many slides because I prefer to be talkative also because I'm a little sick, so I need to keep myself alive. I cannot multitask too much, but I have some slides. No, I wanted to say that I had the privilege to come back once again as an advisor of the European Commission in the last 1.5 years in authoring a report that I don't know if you know the existence, has been released like a month ago. That is insights from the Internal Security Fund project on protection of place of worship. I will show direct link. So the European Commission Joint Research Center has decided to run like an analysis on what, the 10 project in the internal security funds on protection of place of worship have produced in the last, in the frame between 2021 and 2024. So we basically downloaded all the available reports from all these projects. Some of them I've seen represented in here, of course. And we ran a comparative analysis. I will say, a little bit about this, in a minute. And this really allowed me to touch base on what has been produced in the last 5 years, in the protection of place of worship. I can say as a first reaction as a researcher that what has been produced is considerable, but it's still very fragmented because communities, it's not fragmented in terms of research, it's in terms of accessibility. Communities that want to know a little more about risk analysis, or threat assessment at a given, place of worship, they know nothing about, like availability of technologies or what type of framework they should adopt, or what is the best way to communicate to sorry, communities, what are the threats, how to react in case something happens. So I've learned a lot, but at the same time, I can say that a lot has been produced. The critical mass of knowledge that is needed by a religious community in order to have something accessible and to be used to enhance the protection of place of worship is available. At the same time, I can say that since this project at a certain moment fade away, of course, most of the time the knowledge that they've produced fades away because the websites may disappear after a few years. So what was the very smart idea from the Joint Research Center is to create a knowledge hub for protection of place of worship where all the deliverables of the project are being stored over time. So also beyond the normal terms of hosting of the websites of the internal security funds, related project. And also let's say, an approach in analyzing all this material has been put together. So to make this material more immediately accessible, depending on the type of topic you want to explore. Like you're looking for risk analysis or you're looking for training, because the amount of material, as I said, it's considerable. A lot of projects have produced multimedia, so or courses or awareness type of multimedia that tells you a little more about what you would can expect, what may happen, how you would react, and so on and so forth. What can, so that also the communities can, a little bit picture themselves, in what could happen, and therefore being better prepared. Awareness campaign and so on and so forth. The material is very, varies in types. And so what I've tried to do with the colleagues, that have tasked me to support this kind of initiative in the last 1.5 years is to create a catalog of all this material, from the ISF project, and then not only categorize them according to report, for risk analysis or, like multimedia or posters or so on and so forth, but also try and a little bit create, a way to make them more accessible according to the type of life cycle of the security life cycle they face. So prevention, preparedness, response, recovery. So the four typical life cycle of security, but also from the human aspect. So whether they include more legal, sociological, or organizational or technological aspects, and so on and so forth. So what this has produced so far, I can show it because I think it's very much of interest for everyone, is this, that the fact that the Commission has published this, in the toolbox for, you see, they have a specific knowledge hub on data and tools to counter terrorism. If you land on this page, there is a one on enhancing the protection of place of worship, where you could first of all download, the report, but also uh, if you scroll a little down, you have all the deliverable. It's 64 deliverable, publicly available deliverables produced by this report in Internal Security Fund, and they are categorized, as I said, the type of deliverable and the phase of security that they normally cover. It was not easy because some of the boundaries between one report and another, whether they are more on preparedness, more on response, it was not easy choice to take. But nevertheless, you need to start from something. It's the very first time someone proposes an approach to categorize and to make it available over time. All the knowledge that this great project have produced, and this has happened. It's online from, I think that the tool for searching through or for sorting out the deliverables is only online for a couple of weeks, while the report, it's online from early November, I think, or late October, 2025. Regarding I had also some slide. What I would like to say is, of course, what the report recognizes the place of worship, the self-protection. First of all, because they have symbolic significance. First of all, they embody the values of religious communities, and therefore, when you attack them, they hit very hard, on population and on those community. Place of worship, they go a little bit against normal critical infrastructure protection rules of engagement. They shouldn't be stepping into the perimeters of critical infrastructure, and while, the place of worship are normally very accessible and welcoming, and they have minimum security measure in place. The more if they are very local, away from, like metropolitan cities and so on and so forth. And they also host very large gathering. They are also very predictable. They happen to a very specific schedule. Events are advertised as much as possible. They are open to everybody. So it's very easy, to access these places. And of course, they gain a lot of media attention. One of the things I can tell that last week I was in a workshop on place of worship, and what I recognized, someone said that Christmas markets are shrinking due to the fact that they have clearly become a target, a potential target, and they are shrinking because they are making them more easy to monitor, because when they are too scattered and too wide, they are more difficult to protect and to monitor. So this is already, we could say, a side effect, of the exactly of the results that this type of attack wanna have. That is also induce fear into the people, and therefore, like modifying the way we normally want to, live certain times of the year, certain events that are related to the place of worship. Um, Statistics have been already, described by, the distinguished colleague that preceded me. These are the projects that were considered by, this report. It's 10 of them, you know them because they are already, the most important, and the funded project on the place of worship in the time frame 2021, 2024. What we did exactly, I would like to show it in a better ways. We applied an analysis framework to evaluate not the project but the deliverables. So according to the security life cycle, so to make it immediately accessible to anyone willing to, approach, protection of place of worship, whether a certain deliverable cover prevention or preparedness or response or recovery, but also whether, the report enters more into the dimension or human behavior awareness and training or technology, because of course also place of worship need technology to monitor situation, to have cameras and so on and so forth, but also in terms of organization, so structure and coordination. But also we added some other, consideration, that is whether the report cover ethical, legal, and social type of consideration. So to even make it more, to allow to narrow down, the results, per report. What I can say as a very immediate takeaway from the analysis that 75% of the report considered by this analysis cover prevention and preparedness the most, because these show that we really need to work on, and the projects are really, like promoting the work in the area of prevention and preparedness. 50% of them are very much focused on, are very much on, human centric. So it's about organization, about society. And only 28 of them out of 61 cover have the full human technological organization integration. The type of deliverable that this project have delivered is training material for professional communities, toolkit and manual for vulnerability assessment. I found them incredibly useful, for approaching also this type of topic for the first time. We need to consider certain communities have never thought of, having the need, to embrace this type of topic, and also digital platform that include, learning portals. And last but not least, public awareness product from where, other communities can take inspiration from, with, posters and campaign for awareness for the religious communities. Very few things. What we tried and narrow down some also best practice out of this project, what the project are trying to, advocate as a, topic that would work in the context of protection of place of worship. Of course, multi-stakeholder cooperation. Still, there is, a very fragmented view among law enforcement, local communities, and local religious communities, what it means, security by design, and what they need to do, to really have a proper interaction. What are the initial signs that may, anticipate and there could be, an attack or some other type of events. Of course, also interfaith solidarity would help. This is very much advocated by many projects. The fact that, of course, faith should, on this topic, come together and, immediately share whether they have been subject to any type of, like malicious or negative event. So also other are prepared, because it can also happen. It is not only targeting one specific religious community, but it could also happen to others. And of course, community empowerment. The very first line of defense is communities. It's, the religious communities, it's the local authorities, it's the local law enforcement. So the fact that this project have produced, so many, videos and training materials, this should be, made available to these communities, so they know that they can rely on this material. I would like to, to conclude with some practical recommendation that we try to also narrow down and to really categorize what the type of stakeholder addressed. Faith communities, they should always appoint a security focal point, because it's important someone is, deals with security, and of course participating in trainings and drills, and start implementing basic security measures, also when possibly engage in interfaith dialogue. Local authorities, of course, they should establish a multi-agency forum, but also support security by design planning. And this is also, of course, in interaction with law enforcement, and facilitate training program. Maybe it's, also we don't have to forget that the duties of civil protection are in the hands of mayors. So mayors could, promote when they feel the need, the fact that the training is available, that, these projects are, delivering a number of multimedia and so on and so forth that can really help, at the very least, find out that there is a need to do something. Of course, promote community cohesion. Last but not least, for law enforcement, designate faith liaison officers. Maybe going into this direction could really create the condition for the religious community to always, interact with the same person, because you also need to build trust. And trust, even though we're talking about faith, doesn't mean that it comes for free. So, having, a faith liaison officer in the law enforcement would for sure help maintaining the communication with the local religious community. Of course, incorporate worship scenarios in training, if possible, and enhance intelligence sharing and prioritize, of course, hate crime prevention, because they are also a sign that something is not working. I will close with this last slide, but I only want to say something. What we find out is that we initially addressed the issue as an awareness problem. And it is true. Very often, you know, religious communities are unaware that they can do something or they should do something. But once they become aware, then they don't have, a toolbox accessible. That's why this was a major step for the Commission to keep the data, to let the project, of course, work and release their work, but to start, creating a unique, knowledge hub so it can become a reference for the communities out there that they want to have access to the material that has been made available, as I say, once again, over time. One of the things it's really missing, we found out, is that, of course, small communities will have very big difficulties in designating, like a liaison, a faith liaison officer, and one of the advice that I think it also sticked into the report was that you should look into, retired law enforcement that are part of the religious communities. Maybe they could be the one that can help the religious communities starting something, like even small basic, security measure, but since they are formerly part of, law enforcement, maybe they are the right person to help into that process. But also they need, a centralized knowledge hub. That is a little bit what the JRC is trying to do here, but also local action in terms of once the local community decides that they have something to do, they not only need knowledge, but also they need a roster of qualified experts in the field, because imagine that in very small communities to find someone that is an expert in, like protection of place of worship is not easy. So we also recognized in the report that there is a clear role for the central religious communities, or for the main one, for developing or making available to their own, local religious communities, a list of experts that can help them, do vulnerability assessment or implement basic security measure. They need some enablers, because otherwise the activities after the awareness will stall because of the unavailability of qualified people and personnel. Thank you very much once again for, allowing me to participate to this panel, and I give back the floor to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So I think we all followed your presentation with a lot of interest to see also our projects there represented. I just wanted to say that, I mean, in our current project Partners.com, we're actually also developing a collection of practices from various projects. So we should definitely keep in touch on that. One of the objectives was also to make it accessible, because of course, the stakeholders will not look for EU projects and see, whatever they have produced in their websites. But on the things that you found in your work, just a couple of questions popped up. So when you looked at the various deliverables and what the projects have achieved and their outcomes, um, how much of that have you seen also implemented? So, or because obviously there's lots of, I guess, guidelines and, practices developed, but was there also this element of actually being implemented with the communities, with the police, with the stakeholders?
No, I see. I see that in principle, when you look at the way the project have implemented the material, of course, in that context, the material and the deliverable and the approaches and the best practice have been implemented thoroughly. Unfortunately, when you go around and you go into also some symbolic, like place of worship that are not maybe let me do an example in a capital city, but they're still relatively famous. You see that not so much have been implemented. Of course, after 15 years in critical infrastructure protection, you develop, is the only thing I can claim myself that I have developed. You develop a keen eye in saying, in watching, around and saying, okay, I see that something has been implemented. Very often I walk into places that, according to my own opinion and my own perception of critical infrastructure protection in the modern time, should deserve certain type of protection. You don't see that. So I can tell that still there is a lot of work to do. And the fact that we are in prevention, and preparedness, it makes a perfect sense. But we need to work absolutely on response and recovery, because this is absolutely, the direction that, critical infrastructure protection has taken, with the switch to critical infrastructure resilience, because we know that certain attacks can happen. We need to respond and recovery, and therefore that is also something that maybe can be implemented in the next round of internal security fund project, or maybe the other colleague have an answer because they've been deeply involved in those projects. I wasn't involved. I only saw the project through the eyes of a normal person that goes on the website, downloads everything, and access the material from the perspective of the end user. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Maybe just one more thing. In our work, it was, I mean, one of the things that popped up really whilst working with the communities was the idea of funding. So, like you have all these great practices, and but then there's a huge difference between communities. Some of them have even financial support from the state, so they are very well versed in this. They already have quite a few things implement, also the physical security, whereas other ones, also the smaller ones, they don't actually have the financial capacity to do this, even if they wanted to. So I was wondering if other projects, or if you've seen this topic at all in your overview.
No, I mean, to me, I always have a big dilemma about this, because we tried everything we could, to be very responsible with the way our society is traced and tracked, in terms of, with our smartphone, we are now, all the time traceable and trackable and whatever. But I think that in the case of cities, we need to talk about cities, because otherwise we end up, doing like an exception, like, or a special case out of the place of worship. We are going into the direction of smart cities. We need to have a smart place of worship. Because in the moment we only call it about security, it's natural that as we are installing sensors, for example, for rain or for earthquakes, or for I have some project with the university. We have Brindisi Smart City Port, for example. The fact that we are placing sensors, these sensors are ending up also close to the place of worship. So I think that the fact that we have sensor available with the due respect of privacy, because of course is a like considered a human right, we need to have tools that have dual use. Sometimes we only use the tools and say, okay, this is only for this type of event. We need to have smart cities that are becoming also smart place of worship, where the basic monitoring feature, more than security feature, because we are entering into another phase, maybe comes later, are already part of the city. They just need to be breached so that we also capture scenarios that are related to place of worship. So we have all the capabilities without breaching, or without tampering too much with the of course rights of privacy or data protection type of rights. But here we have a major interest that is the society, orderly living, and so on and so forth. So one of the answers could be also the change of narrative. Otherwise, it looks like you're placing sensor only for because everything looks suspicious, and people do not tend to like cameras or other things. Why, if you say that this is part of a smart city? Smart city is more in positive type of communication. So maybe also changing the narrative would change the way we deal. Of course, this has to become from the local communities. They need to be aware of the fact that modern world has new threats, hate crimes and so on and so forth, and we need to deal with them. So, we shouldn't be acting by, nightmare removal strategy. It's not gonna happen to me. It could happen to you if you have placed, some initial measure. At the very least, you may get some signs. Otherwise, you are completely, undefended.
Mm. Yeah, definitely some very good points. And also the idea of involving all the local authorities. So basically the city and not put the burden on the religious community itself. That's actually a good point. All right. Well, thank you so much for the overview and the insights. And now we move over to Peter van de Kromet, who is founder and director of Strategy and Innovations at DISSS, which is the Dutch Institute for Safe and Secure Spaces. He's an experienced senior project manager, community manager, and senior business consultant with 40 years of experience in geo IT in several markets like government, utilities, and telecom. He finds solutions to complex challenges with a co-creative and practical approach, has a bachelor degree in city planning, so talking about cities, and a master degree in geographical information systems. Previously, he worked for the DITSS Foundation, Geodan, ESRE, so we have a couple of acronyms here as well. Siemens, Nixdorf, and the province of South Holland. So yeah, a geography expert. That's we're usually a bunch of social scientists. So it's really exciting to have people with different backgrounds. So please, Peter, go ahead. I guess you have some slides for us.
I have a few. Although I'm a geographer, I'm also a social geographer.
Ah,
So, so yeah, I'm
building bridges.
back to base. Yeah, indeed. But it's about city planning. It's about places. It's about protecting places, and it's about supplying our citizens with safe and beautiful places where they can live happily and be their own. So that's of course from my educational background, a very interesting part that I am now into this foundation, the Dutch Institute for Safe and Secure Spaces. Talking about, of course, today is we are talking about protecting places of worship, but we as DIS and the former foundation DITS, we started with EU-funded projects more in the area of protecting public spaces, where we developed tools for vulnerability assessment, where we worked on trainings for vulnerability and risk assessment for protecting public spaces. And then the opportunity came by to participate in the project that Marcin is going to explain most likely a little bit more about. So I will refrain from too much of that information, I'm sure. Otherwise, I won't make Marcin happy. So and now we moved on to a new project called Shielded, which is also ISF funded. I think because it's interesting on top of the remarks that Alessandro made, that of course he looked at the ISF projects that were funded in the light of protecting places of worship. There are also a lot of projects in the light of protecting public spaces, which definitely come up with results that can be easily adapted in protecting places of worship. And looking at some of the tools from the projects that I've been involved in, or we have been involved in, is that there are actually results, not only deliverables as in reports, but also some very practical tools or training material, guidebooks, methodologies that definitely should be made publicly available somewhere. And it would be a very good recommendation for Brussels. Maybe it's already there at JRC. I'm not aware of the site that Alessandro shared with us. I'm very interested, where we can actually publish the results from all the projects, so everybody can find it and everybody can download the tools and download the materials and the guidebooks and the training material for that. I know we had some contact with CEPOL about the training. For the vulnerability assessment tool that we have been developing within the light of the Prosperous project, we actually have some contacts in the Netherlands with the Bisdom of Utrecht, which is the Catholic Church for Utrecht and all surroundings over there. actually implement or execute that tool for their places of worship. And when you talk to, actually in this case, we talked to the bishop himself and his security officer, but because he does have a security officer, which is, so to say, his bodyguard, but he is also responsible for the security of other parts. They are not so much aware. Of course, they know that the attacks, terrorist attacks, and left wing, right wing occur on many places in Europe, but they have no clue. To be honest, I'm over exaggerating here, but of course they are scared, but they have no clue what we are developing at the moment and the tools that are already available. So at some point we need to let's say start the orchestra and make them listen to the things that we have been developing and have been trying to produce to help them in offering safer places of worship for themselves, but also for their followers. So and that's a challenge. The Shielded project is the project that we are currently involved in. Let me just share a few slides. To be honest, where's the share button? Here's the share button. Share. Is it sharing? And let me go to the presentation. Full screen. You can see it?
Yes.
Perfect. It's a project that started half year ago or so. So we are pretty new. We don't have that much results at the moment. There's a first important deliverable coming up by the end of this year. We are, I believe, with 16 or 17 partners, some of them well known. I'm not going through them, but important is also the Unicre and the Enhanced Faith Institutes. Oh, sorry, mother is calling. And what we are, I have to make this. Oh no, are we still there?
Yeah, we can see the second slide.
Yeah, but I can't. I clicked the button and now. Let me wait a minute. Where is my screen?
Probably minimized it. Just need to blow it up again.
Check, but where is my? Oh, here's my screen. Yeah. Okay. This project is about bringing together three important stakeholders, which have also been mentioned already by Alessandra and I believe also by Jose, which are the faith institutes or communities, the local governments, and law enforcement organizations, the local law enforcement organizations, to actually start dialogues and start, in our case, we are going to build in 8 different countries and 8 different cities, going to build the, how did we call them? The local shielding councils. And there we will start educating individuals. We will bring together people from different religions. Usually they are, and for the case in the city of Rotterdam, we have somewhere in the city center of Rotterdam, an area where there are 5 or 6 different religious places from different religions. And people living there from all these different religions. So it's bringing together all those cultures, all those religions to cooperate and to jointly work on the security of their places and of the whole area and to make actually the whole place a better place to live. So and that means that we are trying to enhance the security for those places and to also start sharing the freedom of religions. And that's where, next slide, why don't I get to the next slide? Usually it works if I say next. connecting. No. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing and set it up again because I think I somewhere made a little mistake. There we go. Yes. Where's the, yeah, and now go to the next slide. Oh,
It should be
there it is. Sorry.
left down.
Yeah, yeah. Usually it works with my arrows, but it doesn't. I have to go on the screen. Okay. Sorry. So the objectives of the project, I will go well quickly, is to actually build. Oh, what's happening? Sorry.
If you want, I can help with changing the slides. I can request a remote.
Well, on my screen, it's the whole Zoom is overlapping, and I want to get rid of it. But then when I click it, I lose my screen. But I think I'm back now, so let me try.
Yeah.
Continue.
Oh, you can see the slide for sure.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. So we want to, of course, work on these resilient communities to build them and to make them more tolerant to each other, but also to others. To help those communities in being able to recognize harmful behavior, we did develop some tools to do that as well in the Prosperous project. I'm sure Martin will elaborate. And to involve all the target groups. So not talk about them, but talk with them. To involve actually also the citizens. And to make sure that at the end of the project, the results will be still available. Let me now. This is so strange. Now I don't see the button anymore. To go to the next slide.
If you just click once on the slide, then you should be able to see them on the left bottom corner.
I click on the slide, but I don't see. I thought yeah. Just a minute ago, I saw it on the left, the button, you're right, but now I don't. I have no clue why it is gone.
Does it work
Sorry,
with using the arrows, perhaps, of the...
Yeah, I tried.
No?
I'm trying the arrows. I'm sharing. Sorry, I do it again. I have to stop sharing. Sorry for this. And then I am going to not try to change anything anymore. Yes, this is the next. Yeah, specific objectives. There you go.
And just keep the mouse on the...
I'm not going to touch the screen anymore. So it's the specific objectives for this project is that we want to maximize the local participation. That's the real key here, to involve all stakeholders, including, as I mentioned earlier, the particular citizens and the religious people that actually visit places of worship. Apart, of course, from the communities themselves, the faith communities and the local governments and the law enforcement. And to start exchanging between faith a dialogue. And this dialogue then can be established in this new cooperation type, what we call this councils, local councils, which should actually stay after the project, at least for the 8 cities that we have in our vision. But hopefully we can build, and we are definitely making a material so others can copy the idea of building these local shielded councils, and then start after the project, so we can share it with many other of faith communities and cities who want to attack these vulnerabilities at local, religious places. And the target groups, well, I already mentioned them. The direct target groups are, of course, the professionals from police, community leaders, but also local government. These are the more operational who actually have it as a task on their list. But there are other groups. Oh, yeah, okay. These three called in this is triangle of management, where we bring together, as mentioned, these local governments, law enforcement, and the leaders of religious communities and religious buildings and places. It's not only the places, by the way, we are also in religious gatherings and events that we want to focus on. Share a political responsibility within those councils and work on solutions and build awareness and execute trainings. So, secondary targets are more the teachers in the schools and the politicians, but also journalists and media influencers. So all these people within that area, within those local shielded councils areas, should be involved and should be invited to the workshops that we are about to organize in these 8 areas. And of course, don't forget the community themselves and the families and the young people and others who actually want, well, for them we are doing is for them we are bringing hopefully a more safe and secure religious place. We have some expected outcomes, which I will not go into details, but if you want, you can go on the website and check it out. There is a new deliverable coming up. What's important is that we have 5 different pillars within these local shielded councils, which is a cooperation in a partnership, that we write down this cooperation in an agreement, that we work on a particular culture within the collaboration with each other, that there is some management and continuity, and that we exchange information between those local shielded councils. So that's what we are working on. There are quite some countries involved. That's a little bit more of the project. But I think most important is that we work on collaboration with many actors, with many different stakeholders to tackle this issue, and to also identify and be aware of how do we identify a lone wolf? Which is very difficult, but how do we spot abnormal behavior and try to prevent attacks and well, prevent, which is actually the key, if you ask me. So the project, as I said, just started half a year ago. We still have 2.5 years to go, if I'm not mistaken. We will keep you informed. Join the newsletter. Join the events that we are about to. I checked my notes, but I think I said pretty much everything I wanted to say.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, please feel free to also share the website of the project.
Oh, yes, of course.
So we can all access it. Maybe just a short question. I mean, obviously you guys are at the beginning with the project. And however, it is the project is very much focused on the idea of cooperation and bringing together stakeholders that maybe are not actually familiar to each other much. So I'm thinking, for example, certain faith communities and police. I mean, how do you expect to deal with the challenges of this? Establishing this these channels of communication, bringing these people together, considering that oftentimes there is a lack of trust, between civil society and security institutions, especially.
Well, at least what we did in Rotterdam, I'm not that informed about the other locations, but in Rotterdam, we contacted the law enforcement guy who is responsible for that particular area. Explained him about the project, told him that we would like to build this local shielded council. He was very enthusiastic, which is this is a requirement, of course, where it starts. You have to have enthusiastic people at law enforcement and within local government, but also within the faith communities. Because if they think, oh, it's never going to work, then well, you will run against walls from the beginning. But most of the times, my experience is that those different religions at a local level, they know each other, and they do talk to each other. Mostly they respect each other, and they all have contact with the law enforcement officer that's responsible for as a liaison for religious organizations and for the schools, religious schools in that area. So but they hardly ever have sat down around the table all together at the same time. And when you then discuss the topic of protecting places of worship, they look at each other and they say, oh, okay, well, some have already taken action, like, to be honest, mostly the Jewish, because they are pretty high on security. But the Catholic churches never thought about it, never been active in it. Muslim, okay, yeah, they are aware that they could be a target. But all the Catholics, and they have no clue what they hear when the others are talking about security measures. That's my experience. But when you have them on the table, my experience that they find it very helpful, very useful to share experiences, to discuss methods of protecting the places of worship, to collaborate together, to have sometimes WhatsApp groups or whatever kind of communication channels to inform each other about suspicious stuff. So, and that's when it starts. And then they start also involving the people who are helping within their religious places, within their churches and synagogues and mosques. Inform them about the initiative of our project of Shielded. Ask them, the next step will be that we ask all those people to join into workshops and to awareness evenings, so to make them aware of the threats that could be there, to give them the things that we developed within Prosperous, the whole run, hide, tell methodology, maybe some other useful suggestions, or if there is an attack, or if they see something which is not okay. Those tools have been developed within Prosperous and tested. So it's I think, and if we bring together all this knowledge and all these tools and all these methods at some central point somewhere in Europe, maybe at GRC or at another institute, would be very helpful. From that point, then we have one central point where all the knowledge, and that could be the knowledge base, is brought together.
Yeah, sounds good. So again, second time that we hear about centralizing knowledge, which seems to be the way forward. All right. But now, without further ado, we're gonna give the floor to Martin, who will have to really be on time and not longer than 15 minutes. So we have a couple of minutes for questions as well. Please, Martin, go ahead. And we already heard about Prosperous, so it's
Sorry,
all
Martin.
been prepared. Red carpet's been laid out.
Yes. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. And as you said, I would like to also thank Alessandro and Peter for already, introducing Prosperous into this panel. And regarding Alessandro's work, I think it's really something which I really appreciate, that someone made such effort to make accessible all the deliverables, because I can see that this is the problem for sustainability of the results, especially in the sector like places of worship, because as Peter said already, there is in case, for example, for Polish Catholic Church, there's a lack of let's say need for making improvement in the protection. And as you can see at the moment in Poland, the situation is really tense, let's say, because of the Russian aggression to Ukraine, and now we have examples of really acts of sabotage in our Polish, lastly in Polish railway sector, but there are also some cyber attacks. Every day there are some cyber attacks to the administration, to some systems, and also some other like arsons of shopping centers and many things which may happen. And I think that there is not the exemption that places of worship would be safe of such incidents. So I prepared some slides to first introduce the issue of. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I would like to introduce the topic of, let's say, aligning the concept of protection regarding the critical infrastructure, and then we'll try to make some linkage to Prosperous project, which was the ISFP funded project conducted by 17 partners from various sectors. There were represented religious communities, but also security experts, law enforcement units, and also crisis management units, firefighters. So we had some mix of partners which enabled us to prepare some activity, to make some activities, and also to prepare some I hope useful tools, templates, methodologies to increase the protection of places of worship. And okay. First of all, a few information about the, let's say, definition of the critical infrastructure in Poland. So mostly, I think that it's quite similar to the other European countries. It is focused on the systems and organizations which are necessary for proper functioning of the state and economy. So mostly it is focused on energy companies producing oil, also for power stations, power lines, but also for banking sector, transport, ICT, water management, emergency services, and public health. And in fact, in our documents, in our strategy, there is the list of the objects which are obliged to follow the strategy for critical infrastructure protection, and the religious institutions and the religious buildings are not covered by this list. However, as it was mentioned before, they are quite easily identified as like a soft target with gatherings of people vulnerable to attacks, with some minimal use of protection measures being applied already. So that they could benefit, and then they could use the strategy and also the guidelines for critical infrastructure, mostly about the risk assessment, vulnerability analysis, emergency planning, multi-agency coordination, and resilient building. But what is very important, they could be done only as not obligatory by the law, but they need to be voluntary, applied in religious places. And in case of Polish Catholic Church, there is a special agreement between Poland and the Holy See, when it's established the autonomy of religious of the church in the scope of organizational liturgy, management of all the buildings, administrations of the institutions, and also conducting the religious ceremonies. but also there is some encouragement for cooperation with the state when there is whereas the public safety of the gatherings, and also to coordinate with the state authorities if the events are in the public domains, or the Catholic authorities should respect the regulations for organizing the mass events. But as I said, this is only at the voluntary basis, not the obligation by the law. But from our experience, we can see that for large gatherings, for large events, there's always very good cooperation between Polish religious institutions and also with the police or firefighters or the medics. However, this of course, when we are talking about the small communities with not a lot of resources, let's say, that's difficult for them to apply the let's say money and time-consuming methodologies for increasing the protection. So that's why once again there's a need for really work on the raising the awareness, how they should put some more focus on the issues of the security. And in the critical infrastructure objectives, and I would like to also to compare them with the objectives and results of Prosperous. So mostly the infrastructure protection based on some security by design principles for church buildings, evacuation plans, crowd management procedures, also put stress to training, and this case could be training of clergy volunteers and also event stewards. We also call them welcome staff. Cooperation with local authorities, police, firefighters, medicals, as well as making some preparedness for severe scenarios, and of course, enhancing cyber awareness for the digital infrastructure of church administration. And when we compare it with Prosperous objectives and results, we can see that there are many of things in common. First of all, the same attitude, like extending the critical infrastructure principles to soft targets, which are perfect example is places of worship and the religious gatherings, and also in Prosperous we made assumption that the base of increasing the protection is making the vulnerability assessment at the beginning. So in Prosperous based on the European Commission tool and based on the work done by this and this, we prepared the methodology and template adapted to the condition of religious sites, and also provides guidebooks with security by design, also procedures, recommendations for prevention, detection, response, and recovery to the terrorist attacks. All of them are adapted to the conditions of religious sites. So even there is a general procedure which try to make them to present them in the specific condition of religious places, and also to strengthen cooperation between religious administrators with police, with fire services. As I said, in the consortium, we have representative of those services, so they would cooperate in workshops and also in some other activities during the project, and also prepared some communication protocols how to make it smooth before as a preventive measures, but also during the incidents. And what is more, there's a attitude to build social resilience through some a comprehensive, I think, set of awareness materials, brochures addressed to specific type of staff. and also as a set of security measures. This is ready for policymakers to use it for promotion of for the protection of soft targets. And as a practical example,
we did good, Marcin. We did good.
Yeah.
Really nice when I look at it again. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and in fact, I would like also to present some practical example of the cooperation within the consortium, because we have the RGS of laws in the consortium, the religious authority and community, and also with the other partners, we can make, let's say, a full cycle of protection activities in the place of this specific place of worship. So we start with, as I said, risk assessment and security planning. It was the vulnerability assessment workshop, 3 days in Lodz, where we examine the cathedral, make some plans, check the possible scenarios, evaluate the risk and so on, and then based on that we prepared for the site some set of recommendations how they could increase the protection, what would be done, mostly without a lot of investments. And then 1 year later, there was the phase when we developed the measures. So we start the preparedness training, and there was a pilot training with the same group of people in the cathedral. So we trained them with the procedures, and also some recommendations also were applied in this place to finally validate that and check, let's say, all these procedures and all this level of qualifications of the trained people by organizing the large-scale exercise in September 2023, and also to enhance the cooperation with state services. And next, a few information about this large-scale exercise. It was quite a one-day event. First was some kind of tabletop exercise, but mostly it was a day when we start with briefing for participants, of course, preparing for the exercise. But mostly we try to make simulate, let's say, the regular day in this cathedral, and also the exercise was organized in the regular day. So there was some masses, some services, and we had to conduct all our activities between services. So it was a quite tight schedule for organizing that. So we checked, let's say, the full cycle of preparing for the event, starting with organizing the welcome team, and then with searching the venue for some suspicious items. So that was also, of course, some procedures, some manuals, instructions for the staff how to make it, and also during the training, before they were trained how to make it. So we would like to check them in quite close to the reality condition. So then there was the incident, the lone actor outside the lone shooter outside the building, and people moved to the building. So there was some hostage situation, and also after some intervention of police, there was, let's say, multiple scenario event. So some people were evacuated in some safe place inside the building. There was some evacuation outside, and also there was a release of Siberian agent during this evacuation. So a lot of things happened at the time, and when we checked really many procedures for the staff. So we tried mostly focus on the staff, but also we checked the cooperation between the staff and the police. There was 250 people at the stage, at the scene, and with cooperation, I mean, there's some communication about the incident, and then also the cooperation between the staff and the services were tested. And of course, there was a lot of feedback and some let's say ideas what could be done better, of course, when it was in the day. But anyway, it was quite a successful day, finished with the briefing session. So we collected all these recommendations for improvement. And that's it. But I have a film, but I'm not sure, Daniela, if we are still on time to make them visible.
Yeah, I think how long is the movie?
3 minutes. But
okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, if it works immediately, I think we can. I think we can show it because it's really. I mean, it gives an impression of an insight how to actually master feels like. So
yeah. So I will try to make it. If something technically will go wrong, I will stop making it. It's okay?
Prosperous protection system for large gatherings of people in religious sites.
I'm not sure if the sound is properly.
There was the other exercise in Yanina in Greece, the second one. So some scenes are from the other exercise.
yeah, maybe if you just speak at the same time, because I think there's no sound from the video.
No?
Yeah, or it's not very loud. But it's really interesting to see how the exercise unfolds.
Yeah, so I will make them, because I can hear it very, let's say. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it's coming from your computer. It's not coming via the Zoom.
Okay. In fact, I'm not using Zoom very often.
So yeah, me neither. I had the same challenge with the video.
But anyhow, as you can see, we have for our disposal for this exercise the whole facility, the Arch Cathedral in Lodz, the largest church in Lodz, and we were able to employ in this exercise different forces of police. So at the beginning there were some regular forces, but then some special units came also for the event of CBRN and some, let's say, suspicious object. So also the law enforcement was quite happy with this exercise because they tested also their procedures. There's a phase of negotiation between the perpetrators and the police. So really comprehensive and large event. The fire brigade with special unit of CBRN, they also train the procedures, but we in the project we prepared some special procedures for the staff, how to behave in face of CBRN situation, how to make the initial decontamination, and how to mitigate the risk of spreading the contamination. So we also test our procedures. Yeah. Yes, and also a lot of observers from national level, but also from the European Commission. So So we get also some feedback from different actors, different perspectives. Very useful for further improving the deliverables of Prosperous.
Wow, it looks like really a massive exercise. Lots of
It was.
resources
It was.
mobilized.
Yes, and we received quite detailed evaluation prepared by this, but was really good to make the valuable deliverables procedures validated and ready to be used. And once again, thank you also, Alessandro, for your work to make that more accessible for public. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Martin. We're a little bit over time, so we're not going to keep our listeners any longer, maybe only 1 or 2 minutes. I just wanted to say a couple of words about Martin, which I haven't said before you started talking. Was excited to hear about Prosperous. So just that you've actually worked in a lot of EU projects. So as a project manager, I'm just going to name a few: Safe Stadium, Nest, Holoscan, Mall CBRN, Melody, Bullseye. I mean, and it's only half of them. So obviously you're the Faculty of Biology and Environmental Protection at the University of Lodz. And again, extremely experienced in EU projects. And really, it was very important for us to also have you guys on board for PATESCOM because of your experience in the more hard security kind of measures, which we kind of missed a little bit in PATES. So perhaps only one thing that I don't want to let you go without asking this question, but then we're really done. Obviously, it's an important thing to make our outcomes and the methods and the measures available. The question is, how about, the danger of, the actual terrorists or violent extremists consulting these materials as well? I don't know if this aspect has been considered in any of the projects, or I don't know what your opinion is.
Sure. I mean, the Commission themselves, they also give a stamp to the deliverables and the outcomes, whether it's EU restricted or EU confidential or even higher levels of security. So in some cases, we cannot share deliverables, simply not allowed. Or what we are doing currently in most of those projects where we have EU restricted deliverables, we make a public version. And then we share that public version. So at least everybody can learn from some of the results. But if it comes to tactics, if it comes to how do you say, modus operandi that we have been investigated, that criminals or terrorists are using, and countermeasures that we are developing, in details, they will never be shared. No. So you have to be aware of but I mean the slides that we have been showing, at least today, from our point of view, are publicly available. So
right, no danger there. All right. No. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for a really insightful, interesting presentations, and I think we got a really all-round up view of the topic, what has been achieved so far, some nice illustrations as well. We're going to keep in touch within PATESCOM, of course, and I'm gonna come back to you with the recording. And I guess that's it for tonight. I wish you a great weekend, and talk soon, and keep safe.
Thank you all. It was nice meeting you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good
Have
to
a nice
meet you.
weekend.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.